The day after Stella decided to have the abortion, she came home from the base. She brought the divorce papers, already approved by her commanding officer. The red approved stamp on the thin paper was as bright as blood, impossible to ignore. Her face showed no guilt, and her voice was ice cold. I was going to wait until you felt better to file, but Leo came back from studying abroad early, so the divorce was happening so fast I could barely keep from smiling. I furrowed my brow slightly to hide my expression. I get it. It was an arranged marriage, after all. You can't force these things. She guiltily handed me a property deed transfer. I know I've done you wrong, so I'm willing to walk away with nothing. The house and the $30,000 your grandfather left are all yours. I took the papers casually and sighed. Well, in that case, we shouldn't see each other again. You know how deeply I cared for you, and if we were to meet again, Stella quickly promised, we won't. I won't bother you again. Watching her, looking like she was ready to get on her knees and swear an oath just to be with her old flame, I smiled at her. In that case, I wish you and Mr. Leo a long and happy life together. Stella seemed relieved that I wasn't putting up a fight. A smile I hadn't seen in ages appeared on her face as she quickly got up to pack her things. This house was a wedding gift from Stella's grandfather. It was expensive, practically priceless on the current market. The fact that she was leaving it to me plus $30,000 meant I had the startup capital for my own business. My uncle always told me, getting married isn't a man's only path in life. If you're brave enough to work hard and push forward, things will never be dark. With the economy opening up, the government was encouraging people to start their own businesses. This was my chance. After Stella finished packing, she saw the smile on my face and looked a little surprised. I'm leaving. Aren't you sad? I wiped the smile off my face and stood up to hand her the last of her luggage. What's there to be sad about? You're going off to find your happiness, not to the gallows. Stella frowned and sighed. Edward, you don't have to pretend you don't care. I understand. I forced a fake smile and pushed her out the door. You should go. Don't you have to pick Leo up from the train station? Seeing how accommodating I was, a deep sense of guilt and pity filled her eyes. Edward, I truly hope you find your own happiness. I nodded and walked her out of the yard. As Stella walked away, she seemed lighter and more carefree than ever before. I shook off the goosebumps that had just appeared, looked at the roses blooming all over the yard and the keys in my hand, and slammed the door shut with satisfaction. Perfect. I was finally free, too. After the divorce, I immediately threw out everything that belonged to her, cut ties with our mutual relatives, and sold my position at my government job to an acquaintance in the neighborhood. With that done, I started planning my new shop. 3 months later, on the day my clothing store opened, I got a call from a familiar yet strange voice. Familiar because during my 5 years of marriage to Stella, this man would occasionally call, asking for her in a gentle, refined tone. Strange because I had never actually met him. He was the one that got away, the man Stella secretly loved but could never have. His voice was as calm and gentle as ever. Is this Edward? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call you. Stella told me not to bother you, but I had no other choice. I'd heard that the day after our divorce, Stella had already submitted a new marriage application to her superiors. I had never seen her so eager for anything in the 5 years we were married. I calmly crunched the numbers on my calculator and said, no other choice? What can a powerless ex-husband like me possibly do for you? Doesn't she know a good ex is supposed to act like they're dead? Leo's voice cracked. It's Stella. Stella was arrested by the police. This can't get back to her superiors, or she'll be disciplined if it reaches the base. I'm begging you to help us. My hand paused on the calculator. What could I possibly do to help with something like this? I didn't have any power or connections. Just as I was about to shut him down, it hit me. I had money, but why should I help? Sorry, Leo, my friend. Like you said, Stella told you not to bother me. If I show up and help you out, it might not be great for your marriage, you know? Besides, I'm just an ordinary guy. I can't help you with something this big. You should find someone else. With that, I hung up the phone with a sharp click. Stella and I had a childhood betrothal, an arranged marriage set up by our families. I was a wild kid, hated studying, and only liked drawing and sketching with my uncle, who was a designer. My parents could never control me, but Stella was different. She was known around the military compound as a model student, pretty, athletic, and as fast on the track as she was sharp in the classroom. I'd had a crush on her since we were kids, and I always listened to whatever she said. When my parents couldn't handle me, they'd ask Stella to step in. But then she went to a military academy out of state, and my uncle, against the whole family's wishes, took me to LA to study design. We lost touch. I thought our lives would never cross again. But our families insisted that a marriage arranged by the older generation couldn't be broken, and they decided to set us up. I still remember the day we met again. The river flowed like silk under the bridge in that charming old town. The girl from my memory, with the white shirt and high ponytail, had blossomed into a stunning, elegant woman. It felt like an electric shock right to my heart, a tingling warmth. That day, I asked her seriously, "Do you really want to marry me?" She ruffled my hair just like she did when we were kids and smiled affectionately. "What? You don't want to marry your Stella anymore?" Of course I did. Both our families were happy to see it happen. We got married soon after. After the wedding, we got along great. In the bedroom, we were terrifyingly compatible. The thing is, she only asked if I wanted to marry her. She never told me that she, in fact, didn't want to marry me. In our 4th year of marriage, I found a storage box in our room. Inside were 4 exquisitely wrapped gift boxes. I thought they were a surprise from Stella for me. I opened them excitedly, only to find a small card with another man's name on it. "I'll secretly save up all my love for the brightest star in my heart, Leo." My heart dropped. The blood froze in my veins. Leo? Who was Leo? And who had she been saving 4 years' worth of gifts for? Stella was out on an overnight mission that night. I sat on the edge of the bed and thought all night long. The next morning, she returned, looking weary from her trip. I held the gift boxes up to her, demanding an explanation. She just stared at me, silent. Finally, she spoke. "He's a boy I like. He was a younger student of mine at the state university. But it's impossible between us. He went abroad." Time stood still. In that moment, I felt a betrayal unlike any I had ever known. "So that's why you married me?" She lowered her head in a silent admission. After a long pause, Stella slowly looked up at me. "Things are good now, aren't they? Why dwell on all this?" Disappointment washed over me. I looked at the neatly arranged postmarks on the table and laughed at myself. "So every time you had me rush to the post office for those special stamps, the letters you so carefully mailed, they were all for him." Stella didn't deny it. That day, I smashed all 4 of those gift boxes and threw a massive tantrum. From that point on, Stella and I started giving each other the silent treatment more and more often. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. One day, about 3 months later, Stella was eating some tart fruit when she got sharp stomach pains. A trip to the hospital revealed she was pregnant. That day, I thought long and hard. I didn't want my child to be born into an unhappy family. I put the ultrasound picture on the table, hoping to give us a chance to reconcile. When Stella came home, she hugged me and wouldn't let go. "I'm going to be a mom. I'm having a baby. We're finally having a baby." The setting sun streamed through the window, illuminating her joyful, beautiful face. I thought that, from then on, she would put aside those inappropriate feelings for the sake of our child. But Stella disappointed me again. When she was 5 months pregnant, I found a 5th gift she had prepared for Leo in a storage closet, along with a handwritten letter. The letter said that Leo was coming back, and Stella had replied that she would always be waiting for him right where she was. That day, I lost control and had a hysterical, screaming fight with her. Stella looked like she was just enduring it, but her hands were clenched tightly around the letter she meant to send to Leo. I was beyond broken. In the heat of the moment, Stella's face suddenly went pale, and she clutched her stomach. On the way to the hospital, I apologized over and over, the regret in my eyes deepening. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have made you so angry. Stella, just hold on." Her words were one thing, but on the way to the hospital, She made me pull over so she could run into the post office and mail that letter to her precious old flame. They saved the baby, but the doctor said we had gotten there a little too late. There was a high probability the child wouldn't be born completely healthy. I looked at Stella, who was standing there with an innocent expression, and a deep hatred rose within me. All my pent-up emotions finally exploded. I started smashing everything I could get my hands on. After I had vented, my eyes were bloodshot, and my voice trembled from suppressed sobs. Did you hear that? Because you had to mail a letter to your old flame, this perfectly healthy baby might be born with a disability. It's all your fault. Stella absorbed my fury, guiltily trying to comfort me. It's my fault. I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Edward. Hit me, yell at me. I won't fight back. Looking at her face, I just felt she was being utterly fake. It was disgusting. I needed her to know that she had wronged me and that she couldn't refuse me. Finally, Stella broke. She begged me, Edward, can you please just let me go? I can't take this anymore. This isn't the life I want. I let out a cold laugh, tears welling in my eyes. Oh, really? Then what kind of life do you want? A flicker of nostalgia crossed Stella's face, her gaze falling on an envelope on the table. It had arrived that morning from her old flame. She didn't know that I was already aware he was coming back soon. All my recent provocations were just a way to push her away faster and more decisively. I viciously snatched the envelope from the table, tore it to shreds, and threw it on the floor, my voice a hoarse roar. Haven't I been good to you these past 5 years? Why is he still the only one you think about? Why don't you love me? That roar took everything I had. Even I couldn't tell how much of it was real and how much was an act. Stella looked at me with a complicated expression. Edward, you've been very good to me, but feelings, you can't force them. I've decided to end the pregnancy. Let's get a divorce while we're at it. I don't want to keep holding you back. My eyes were red, my body shaking with suppressed sobs. The impatience in Stella's eyes grew more obvious. She lowered her voice and said the words I'd been waiting to hear. Enough. I'll walk away with nothing. I'll leave everything to you. With that, unable to stand my crying any longer, she slammed the door and left. Stella had no idea I had been waiting for this day for a long time. She thought she could walk away with nothing, relying on her military salary and allowances, and live a happy life with her old flame. Little did she know, her good life was about to come to an end. I sat in the bathtub, carefully replaying everything. I wondered what Leo's real motive was for calling me. He could have asked other military families for help. Why come to me? Business at the clothing store had been booming. I didn't have much else to do, so after Leo called me 3 times in a row, I decided to go see what the fuss was about. At the police station, a guard quickly brought Stella out. She looked much worse than she had 6 months ago, gaunt with dark circles under her eyes. When she saw it was me, her eyes showed surprise, followed by a flash of astonishment. I rarely dressed up around her before. I guess I'd let myself go a bit after the divorce, and now I looked much more vibrant than I used to. Edward, what are you doing here? She was clearly surprised. I gave her a small smile. Your new man called me, said he was sure I could help. I had no idea I had that kind of power, so I came to see for myself. The light in her eyes faded instantly. She gave a bitter smile. You're right. What could you possibly do to help? Leo shouldn't have bothered you. I'm sorry. I adjusted my collar and sighed. It's fine. You don't look like you're dying, so I'll be going now. Stella stood up anxiously. Wait. She looked at me and lowered her head. All this time, I felt like I owe you an apology. If apologies worked, who would need cops? And Stella wouldn't be locked up right now, would she? I waved my hand and gave a carefree smile. Don't worry about it. Thanks to you, I'm doing pretty well for myself, thriving, you could say. As I left the station, I ran right into Leo. I recognized him instantly. He was handsome with a gentle, refined air, as calm as a still lake. We were complete opposites. No wonder that, after 5 years of living with me, Stella's heart and mind were still full of him. I had no interest in making small talk with my ex-wife's current partner, so I turned to leave. But he hurried over, his eyes moist, looking like he'd found his savior. Edward, is that you? I can't believe you actually came. I'm so happy. You have no idea, Stella's in here because of me. It's all my fault she's in trouble. I had already guessed as much. After all, while Stella might have been unfaithful, she always had a strong sense of right and wrong when it came to major issues. I replied dismissively, is that so? Hearing me respond, Leo's eyes lit up, and he began to plead. So, Edward, can you please help Stella? I was curious what he was up to, so I smiled and asked, how can I help? Leo frowned, looking troubled and guilty. Well, Stella told me that when you divorced, she left all her assets to you. As you know, I just got back to the country, and it wasn't easy for my family to support me while I was away. Now I send half of Stella's monthly allowance back home, and the rest isn't enough for us to live on. I had to resort to some speculative trading, and that's how Stella got arrested. I heard you opened a store and are doing really well. Giving some money back to Stella should be simple for you, right? I laughed. So that's why Leo called me. This was his angle. It made sense. Without her money, Stella was just a captain with a title, struggling to make ends meet. Of course, Leo would be feeling the pinch. I looked at the meek-acting Leo and replied matter-of-factly. Whoa there, buddy. What do you mean, give it back? The divorce decree is very clear. That money was compensation Stella gave me. Think about it. If I hadn't stepped aside for you too, would you be living so happily together right now? Leo's face stiffened, and a strained smile appeared on his lips. Yes, you're right. Stella and I are together all thanks to you. But we're really in a tough spot now. You used to love her so much you wouldn't want to see her suffering in jail, would you? I widened my eyes in mock surprise. That long? Won't that interfere with her duties at the base? Leo waved his hand. Oh, that's no problem. I already requested leave for her. I looked at him, slowly exhaled, and smiled. Well, that's wonderful. To be honest, I was worried about Stella suffering in jail, but seeing how thoughtful and prepared you are, I can rest easy. I'm sure this experience will only make your relationship stronger. Leo saw that I wasn't going to give him any money and was stonewalling him. I don't know what went through his head, but he steeled himself and, in front of everyone, dropped to his knees with a thud. Edward, please just help us. I'm begging you. There were a lot of people coming and going, and all eyes were suddenly on me. I almost burst out laughing. I bent down to help him up, feigning difficulty. Hey, what is this? The other man kneeling before the ex-husband? That's not how it works. Fine, I'll help. Is that what you want? With that, I coolly took a small notebook out of my bag. I wrote down a phone number for Leo. This is the number for the director of the clothing factory I work with. I remember Stella saying you studied fashion design abroad. So you draw up your designs, take them to the factory for samples, and then sell them in my shop. I won't charge you anything. I'll help you sell them. How about that? Leo hadn't expected my help to involve him actually working for a living. His face instantly turned pale, and he looked at me with resentment. Edward, Stella gave you so much money. You have to show some decency, even if it's just for her sake. How can you take it all? Don't you know that was all her hard-earned money? Before I could answer, he continued, I don't care. You have to give me $20,000 today. And your new store, I get half the profits. His greed was so blatant it was almost comical. He really just wanted to lie back and make easy money. But I'm not Stella. I wasn't going to indulge him. I slapped his hand away from my arm, my voice cold. Here's the number. Take it if you want it. If not, get lost. I grabbed my bag and turned to leave. Leo yelled after me, Edward, are you just holding a grudge because Stella married me? Let me tell you, you can't force love. Hating me won't do you any good. He and Stella truly were a match made in heaven. They both said the exact same thing. You can't force love, but what about basic ethics and morality? A married woman and a single man, professing their love across an ocean, just plugging their ears and pretending it's fine. It was laughable. I stopped and turned back with a smile. You're overthinking it. And instead of trying to get money from me, you should probably think about whether you've done anything illegal that might drag Stella down with you. If you get her kicked out of the military one day, you two will really be broke. Leo snorted, his face ugly. You don't need to worry about that. Stella is brilliant. She's about to be promoted to major. A faint smile touched my lips as I left the police station without another glance back. Stella was brilliant, but she was so blinded by him that she'd chosen a man with no common sense. It was only a matter of time before things went south for her. As the days passed, my clothing store got on track. I hired someone to manage it, freeing me up to focus on design. One day, when I went to the factory to drop off some new sketches, one of the workers started talking to me about Leo. "Mr. Edward, I heard you were the one who introduced that Leo to the factory. His designs are gorgeous. You've brought in some serious competition for yourself." I looked up and was surprised to see that more than half the workshop was producing clothes from Leo's designs. Where did he get the money for such a big order? Oh, he's loaded. I heard his partner is a captain about to get promoted and even set him up with a shop on the east side. Something felt off. I thought for a moment, then smiled. "Don't worry about me, ma'am. My shop is on the west side. No matter how well he does over there, it won't affect my business. Besides, so what if Leo knew design? He had no idea how to run a business. Placing such a huge order at once with autumn just around the corner? Who was going to buy summer clothes? And where did he get the money for the shop?" I didn't dwell on it. When the autumn winds began to blow, Leo showed up at my store, clutching a pile of clothes, his eyes red. "Edward, can you help me? I really can't sell these clothes. You said before you'd help me sell them for free. Does that offer still stand?" I blinked and smiled innocently.
I'm sorry, Leo.
"My store is about to stock autumn wear. There's no room for your summer collection." He sat down on the floor in a panic, holding his clothes. "I don't care. If you don't let me sell my clothes here today, I'm not getting up. Edward, you took all the money, and now Stella and I are about to go under. You just watch us drown? You have no conscience." He was so angry he started to choke up, sitting on the floor and wiping his eyes like a child. I looked at him calmly. "Leo, let's get something straight. Stella abandoned her husband and child to chase what she called love. That money was compensation she gave me so she could do that. I have every right to it. She hid her past from me before we were married and cheated on me after. I can take the money she gave me as compensation with a perfectly clear conscience. If you keep making a scene on my floor, don't blame me for calling the police. I'm sure they'd be very interested to see what a freeloader military spouse looks like." Leo shot to his feet, his handsome face flushed with anger, and made a bold declaration. "You just wait. Stella will become a major eventually, and she'll give me a better life. Then you'll know what you lost." I shook my head and scoffed. From the looks of it, he hadn't taken what I said last time to heart at all. A major? He'd be lucky if she could hold on to her current rank. The next time I saw Stella was at the county's new awards ceremony. The county executive personally presented me with a medal, praising my designs for being popular all over the country. At that moment, Stella and Leo were standing below the stage. Leo was holding a baby, about a year old, a smug smile on his face. As I stepped down from the stage, he personally handed me an invitation. "Edward, our marriage application is about to be approved. We're planning the wedding first. For such a happy occasion, we have to invite you for a drink." He leaned in closer and boasted, "I heard Stella's promotion to major is coming through any day now. We'll celebrate the wedding and the promotion together. You'll grace us with your presence, won't you?" I smiled faintly. "Oh, it's taking that long? Could it be the transfer wasn't approved? And why combine the wedding and the promotion party? Short on cash?" I'd heard Leo's clothing store was doing terribly. It wasn't that his designs were bad. It was that he had apparently taken out a loan from a loan shark to fund his last season's collection. Now the clothes hadn't sold, and he couldn't pay it back. He had no money to stock fall clothes, so his store was still full of summer items. To repay his debts, Stella had to swallow her pride and borrow money from her colleagues, one by one. And he still had the nerve to throw a wedding banquet? Wasn't he afraid of blowing all his money and ending up living on bread and water? Leo's face turned green with anger. He gritted his teeth. "What are you so smug about, Edward? Look, this is my and Stella's child. We're finally going to be a legitimate family. I heard you almost made Stella give birth to a disabled baby. Good thing she got rid of it. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms and took a step toward him. Leo retreated cautiously, a flash of fear in his eyes. What are you doing? This is the Civic Center. If you try anything with me or the baby, they'll find out. I stood in front of him, straightened his collar, and sighed. I was starting to feel a little sorry for you, but thanks for the reminder. Do you know why there were problems with that baby? Stella never told you, did she? On the way to the hospital, we passed a post office. To mail a letter to you, she made me wait in the car for a full 15 minutes. In those 15 minutes, the baby was deprived of oxygen, almost suffocating. I almost lost both my wife and my child. She really loves you, doesn't she? Willing to walk away with nothing just to be with you. I just wonder, if one day she has nothing at all, will you still love her just the same? I said it all lightly, then smiled and left the Civic Center. Long before Leo returned to the country, my mother in DC had sent Stella and me a letter. Inside was a newspaper clipping about a student from the state university who had been studying abroad. The charge: smuggling historical artifacts and being deported. My mother probably sent it because the student went to the same university as Stella, wanting her to be cautious. But that day, the letter from Leo arrived at the same time as my mother's. Stella never even looked at the letter from my mother. She was completely convinced that Leo had given up everything and rushed back to the country because he couldn't let her go. She had no idea that he just had nowhere else to go and was using her as a lifeline. Counting the days, it had been almost 6 months. The marriage application Stella submitted was indeed about to be approved. Time flew. On my 29th birthday, my mother came from DC with the daughter of an old friend. My birthday party turned into a blind date. I wasn't planning on jumping into another marriage so soon, but I had to admit, she was my type. Beautiful, graceful, and a well-known project manager at a research institute. My mother said her family background was clean. She was gentle, and she treated everyone with politeness and kindness. Her only flaw was that her father had recently passed away, leaving her family without a patriarch. But to me, that wasn't a flaw. I was upfront about my previous marriage and told her I was willing to date her with the intention of marriage. She smiled. I heard this is how the younger generation dates now. I didn't expect to experience it so soon. At the same time, the results of Stella and Leo's marriage application came back. The decision was not approved. Leo, hiding the truth, kept tearfully demanding an explanation from Stella. Stella didn't know the reason and stormed into her superior's office to ask. The major was furious and threw the investigation report in her face. You still want to get married? You're about to lose your captain's rank. Stella, I mentored you myself. How could you be so foolish? Wasn't Edward good enough for you? Instead of living a good life with him, you had to pine for this rich kid studying abroad, exchanging letters with him from the base for 5 whole years. You're now suspended pending investigation. Your military status will only be restored after they've confirmed you weren't involved in treason. That day, Stella took off her uniform and went home, completely devastated. When Leo saw that the truth was out, he took all the money and ran. Stella was now, for all intents and purposes, broke and had nothing. She was also saddled with the high-interest loans Leo had taken out for his store. I heard all of this from some of the military families I used to know. They came into my clothing store and happened to mention it. Piece by piece, I put the story together. One day, during a torrential downpour, Stella walked into my store, soaked to the bone and looking utterly defeated. She looked at me, her eyes filled with deep regret. I'm not the type to rub salt in someone's wounds, so I kindly handed her a towel. She took it, her voice low and hoarse. Thank you, Edward. I calmly brought her a cup of hot tea. As she drank it, she started to cry in front of me. I'm sorry, Edward. I was wrong. My obsession ran too deep. I hurt our unborn child, and I hurt you. Edward, I'm so sorry. I'm truly sorry. I'm a monster. Her sobs were carried on the wind, making the wind chime at the door tinkle. Lisa, holding a black umbrella, parted the curtain with her elegant fingers and gave me a gentle smile. My dearest modern boyfriend, I'm here to pick you up from work. The room fell silent. Stella and Lisa stood facing each other. I smiled, put my arm around Lisa, and said softly, "Let me introduce you. This is my girlfriend, Lisa, and this is my ex-wife, Stella." A look of shame crossed Stella's face. She lowered her head and quickly turned to leave. I called out to her, "Stella, I'm planning to open a new branch. That shop you have on the west side, you can sell it to me. And those unsold summer clothes, you can sell them to me, too. Everything at market price." Stella's eyes were a little red. She turned her head, her voice trembling. "Thank you, and I'm truly sorry." The rain was pouring outside. Stella ran into the storm without looking back. It was as if she was running toward some kind of liberation. Honestly, there was nothing to be sorry for. Just as she said, you can't force love. Besides, she had already paid a heavy price for her actions. Even selling me the shop on the west side and the summer clothes at market value wouldn't cover a third of the loan shark's debt. I had no idea how Stella was going to make ends meet for the rest of her life. But that wasn't my concern anymore. We had just walked the same path for a short while. The rain had stopped, and we had gone our separate ways. Epilogue. After the store's business stabilized, I handed everything over to my manager and took Lisa on a trip down south. Later, Lisa and I had a grand wedding, and I invited every employee from the factory. On a hot summer night that smelled of soda pop, we laughed and celebrated under the lights, toasting the success of the clothes the workers had made, and toasting my wedding. Oh right, I'm now a nationally famous clothing factory owner. The clothes I design are sold all over the world, known both at home and abroad. What my uncle told me when I was 15 still influences me to this day. As long as you dare to try and dare to work hard, as long as you bravely move forward, you'll find that all roads lead to Rome.